Busch Gardens Tampa is one of my favorite places to go. It's the perfect mix between theme park and amusement park. It's a place where you can see some awesome animals and yet still ride some amazing coasters. But lately, Busch Gardens Tampa has been focusing less on the animals and more on the rides. In 2020, they're adding Gwazi, which looks like it could be one of the greatest rides ever built. And that massive addition is coming directly after Tigris, a premier ride Skyrocket 2, which is a smaller coaster but by no means cheap. Busch Gardens coaster lineup is becoming so good that some people are starting to compare it to Cedar Point and calling it the Cedar Point of Florida. And that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I'm going to be looking at this from every angle, and at the end of the video I'm going to be giving you my final verdict and answer the question of, is Busch Gardens Tampa the next Cedar Point? Now right from the beginning, I know many of you have already chosen a side. You're either on the yes or no side. You may be thinking Cedar Point's immortal and nothing could ever come close to its glory. Or you could completely be on Team BGT, thinking that the future of this park is so bright that it could eventually overtake Cedar Point. So in order to make a good verdict at the end of the video, I'm going to start off by looking at the similarities and differences between Busch Gardens Tampa and Cedar Point. Doing this will allow us to see what they actually have in common. Now while making this video, I was actually very surprised on how much these two parks have in common. For starters, Cedar Point and Busch Gardens Tampa both have a B&M dive coaster, Shikra and Valraven, a B&M invert, Raptor and Montu, a B&M sit-down / floorless coaster, Rougarou and Kumba, an Intamin Blitz coaster, Maverick and Cheetah Hunt, and a huge RMC, Iron Gwazi and Steel Vengeance. But the similarities don't stop there. When you ask someone what non-coaster does Cedar Point need, they would probably say a dark ride, and the same is true for Busch Gardens Tampa. Both of these parks desperately need an indoor attraction of some type. So you can definitely see the similarities between the two parks, but let's not overlook the key differences. The first major difference is that Busch Gardens Tampa is at its core a theme park. Even if they keep adding coasters like this, there's no way that they're going to get rid of all the animals. And along with that, Busch Gardens Tampa also has more things about it that make it less of an amusement park, such as the food, the shows, and overall theming. But like I mentioned earlier, Cedar Point is at its core an amusement park, but it's important to take notice that they're really trying hard to make it more of a park for the entire family, with the new additions being geared towards families, such as the Forbidden Frontier and Snake River Expedition. So that brings us to our main question: is Busch Gardens Tampa the next Cedar Point? The truth is, that question is kind of open-ended, for at least a while anyway. When you say that a park is going to be the next Cedar Point, what the majority of people are implying is that that park has a lot of good quality coasters. This is why some people consider Energylandia to be the next Cedar Point. It's because they have the quantity and also the quality. Cedar Point has 17 coasters, so if you're strictly talking about quantity, Busch Gardens Tampa would need to add at least 5 more coasters to even come close to that number, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. But with that being said, it's impossible to ignore the rapid growth that this park has been doing over the years. Within 5 years, they've added 3 large-scale coasters: Cobra's Curse, Tigris, and Iron Gwazi. They've also added 3 water slides: Colossal Curl, Vanish Point, and Solar Vortex, and a bunch of other things, including shows, animal exhibits, and general park improvements. So this park is definitely growing really fast. So this park seems to be shifting more towards coasters and less on family additions. Don't get me wrong, I always think that this park will be at its core a theme park meant for the entire family, but considering the fact that this is the closest thing Florida has to a park dedicated to thrill seekers, you can definitely see why they're shifting gears and adding more thrill rides. Well, let me explain. When I look at a park, I place it into one or two categories: theme park or amusement park. And out of all the major parks in Florida, practically every one of them goes into the theme park category. Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, Legoland, and Busch Gardens Tampa are all placed into this category, because each of them have their own distinctive theme. So up until recently, I think Busch Gardens was trying to compete with all these parks as a theme park. They tried to market themselves as a park where you could see some awesome animals and yet still ride some amazing coasters. And obviously, as hard as they tried, they just couldn't keep up with the other parks. Even SeaWorld and Legoland have their niche. The word sea is in the name of SeaWorld, and the animals are the main draw for people that come to this park. And even Legoland can stay competitive because it has the niche of people who love Legos. So for a long time, Busch Gardens seemed like a weird mix of family theme park and a full-fledged thrill-seeking amusement park. Now normally that would be fine, but you have to remember that this is Florida, the most competitive state for amusement park. So if people wanted to go to a park that was for families, they would simply go to Disney. For a long time, some of BGT's new additions to the park were new animal exhibits or other family-oriented experiences. You would see a major coaster now and then, but family additions and animals were a main focus. And even though I think those are awesome, it just simply couldn't compete with all the other family additions and attractions from other parks in Florida. So around the time that SeaWorld's financial hardships were coming to an end, I feel like BGT kind of shifted gears. They wouldn't stop catering to families, but they found their niche: extreme thrill rides. If you wanted family rides, you could go to any other of the major parks in Florida. But Busch Gardens Tampa is the place that has a bunch of extreme coasters all in one place. This is why they've added Iron Gwazi only 1 year after Tigris. Iron Gwazi is a coaster that steals a record from Steel Vengeance. This is a savage move from BGT, and I believe it symbolizes a new direction for Busch Gardens. A new direction that includes a lot more coasters and thrill rides in the future. So to finally get around to answering my original question, is Busch Gardens Tampa the next Cedar Point? My answer is not yet. It's going to take a little while for BGT to build up a coaster collection as good as Cedar Point, but Cedar Point might want to keep their eye on Busch Gardens Tampa, because if they keep adding coasters at this rate, within 10 years we might have the new roller coaster capital of the world. Also, there's one other park that I think is a tiny bit closer to becoming the next Cedar Point than Busch Gardens Tampa, but I'll save that for another video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see content just like this every week, and comment below on what are your thoughts of which park is going to be the next Cedar Point. This is The Coaster Josh, signing out.